And welcome to a very special Off the Couch with Dr. Greg. I'm Dr. Greg Cason, and I'm here with Brian Gomez.
Happy Monday, you guys.
And we're going to, this is where psychology meets everyday life, but today we have an extremely special guest. It's comedian Monique Marvez. And Monique, it's so good to have you.
It is my pleasure, I promise you.
Now, your bio is on your website, but that was written by ChatGPT in September of 2021.
Yes.
So I had ChatGPT write you a new bio.
Really?
Yes.
Is that a surprise for me?
Yes. So if I may.
Please.
I'm excited to introduce our special guest, the hilarious and insightful Monique Marvez. Miami native and Cuban-American roots, also Venezuela and Puerto Rican. Mm-hmm. Monique has made a name for herself with unique comedic style that blends sharp wit and personal storytelling. Her career began in the 90s stand-up scene, quickly earning spots on Comedy Central, Showtime, HBO. And Monique is not just a comedian, she's a writer, an actress, and radio personality, where, of course, I knew you on KFI. And she's known for her thought-provoking humor that tackles relationships, social issues, and personal growth. That's where I want to go, but I have one more line. With numerous TV appearances and a dedicated fan base, which we'll talk about, Monique continues to tour, connecting her audiences worldwide. Join me in welcoming the incredibly talented Monique Marvez.
I love that! Oh my goodness, I love that! Because when I read the first GBT chat, actually, may I tell you a little story?
Yeah.
Okay, so the original ChatGPT got to me because a comedian asked ChatGPT about her, right? And it said, as of this time, you don't exist, is what it said about her. She'd been in the game about 10 years.
Oh, my God.
She said, then I asked it about you. And the subject line was respect from. And it wasn't about there's a difference between GBT chat and ChatGPT. Well, like one is like Kleenex, one is tissue. You know what I mean? Like the difference between the brand, whatnot. And the original one said, Monique Marvez, exclamation point. Yeah. Now you're talking about an amazing comedian. Well, it's 3 paragraphs of a love letter where what got me about it, even though it didn't talk about television and radio, it was much more generic. It made me cry. I cried. I cried in a hotel room in Vegas because it was a life well lived. Nothing in those 3 paragraphs said, scandal for stealing material, like dated fellow comic, nothing. Everything about it was my connection, my intention, and my hard work. And I thought, this is ivory soap pure. The details don't matter. And that's why it was but I'm going to use yours now.
I love that. That meant so much to me to read what it said. I thought it could have gone on and on and on because there is so much. But my favorite review came from a YouTube comment.
Really?
A YouTube comment that said, she's a psychologist turned motivational speaker disguised as comedy.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, wow. I thought that was just pithy and put it right on point.
I love that.
And that's why I wanted you on the show, because I thought your comedy hits at the heart. Your comedy is actually so insightful, and I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in, to talk about relationships, to talk about becoming your own person. When I'm watching your podcast and you're talking about, to me, deep things that we could, I'm sorry, you talked about Iris Apfel, which was a story I did in here because of her life, and I'm so impressed, and unfortunately she passed. And then also,
she had a good run though. Come on,
she had an
triple digits,
amazing run. And also talked about Diana Vreeland and The Eye Has to Travel, which you said in the same breath. I'm like, look at her, she's amazing. I mean, everything. So now this is from your act. I got some more facts for you. Married and divorced 3 times. Yep. Hispanic and Catholic.
Yep.
We got the Hispanic and the Catholic going here.
Yeah.
So my dad married 5 times.
Yep.
Mom married 4 times. Mm-hmm. My stepmother was a retired hooker. Mm-hmm. And stepfather turned gay.
Yep.
I mean, you're coming from some deep background.
Real stuff.
And you grew up in Miami.
Yes, I did. I grew up in Miami in the 70s and 80s, which was when it was like Scarface time. The Mariel boat lift happened when I was the McDuffie riots, which were huge. That was the original, before we had Reginald Denny here and before we had everything that happened here, we had the McDuffie riots in the spring of 1980 where a man was killed by 5 policemen and they tried to cover it up. And that exploded my senior year of high school in Gables High. And we had the Mariel boat lift. It was a very intense time to be growing up in Miami.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, that must have been incredibly intense.
Oh, yeah.
But you also went to Humble, Texas?
My parents divorced my senior year of high school.
You had to break out? Oh, my God.
I had to leave Miami and move to Humble, Texas. I graduated high school with Joel Osteen.
That is amazing.
Nice man, amazing human being. And his sister Tammy is the only Tammy I've ever met who not only wasn't a tramp, but was a really nice person. Names are very important. Tammys are usually a problem.
And Monique's a good one.
Yes.
But Humble, Texas, which is spelled with an H for anyone who wants to know.
There's nothing humble about Humble. That's what they'll tell you. Birthplace of Howard Hughes.
Oh, didn't know that either.
Mm-hmm. I am filled with facts.
Oh, but Brian here is also a Texas native.
Where?
Well, he's not. You're not native, but yeah.
Yeah, live there.
Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth.
Yeah, my family's still there.
I'm on my way to Garland at the end of the month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's gonna be hot.
Oh, you don't have to tell me.
And I did my doctoral work out there.
I tell people the devil owns Texas, but prefers to live in hell and rent out Texas. The devil Airbnb's Texas.
And he's making a mint because a lot of people are living there despite the weather.
Moving there.
Mm-hmm. So can I ask you some questions
Anything
about
you want.
Oh my God, I have these kind of generic questions. You know what? I'm going to escape them. How did your Cuban American heritage? Because you talk about this a lot in your podcast and in your stand up, just about growing up in Miami and what things were like and what family was like.
Would you like me to do something I've never done with you?
Yes, of course. Never
in my life. Okay, I'm going to tell the old never in my life. I speak in press releases. People think they know me, but they don't, because I tell them what I want them to know. So I'm going to tell you 3 stories.
Yes.
And then you can ask me anything you want after you hear them.
Okay.
But I'm going to tell you how I became me.
Oh.
I've never said this in public out loud. Okay. Number 1, this predates the ability to explain it. I have always seen things that other people don't see. I see the invisible more clearly than the visible. Like when I was a child, I had a relative. They're all dead now anyway, but I had a relative, and a child doesn't understand sex, but they understand energetic ties. I felt things. And I remember as a little girl at a party telling my mother, Aunt so-and-so is having an affair, or not an affair, what I said as a little girl, because I knew the language from soap operas, I said, Aunt so-and-so is Uncle so-and-so's girlfriend. And they were married to other people.
Oh, wow.
And my mother flipped out. She's like, never say that in public again. What are you, Well, P.S. years later, we found out they'd been having an affair for a long time.
Wow.
But as a child, I saw, now they have Kirlian photography. I saw auras. I could tell if someone was sick. I saw disembodied, I call them angels, but I saw disembodied entities as clearly as I'm looking at you. I saw them very clearly.
Wow.
And that, in a weird way, set me apart. I knew, based on my mother, who's very Catholic, based on my mother's reaction when I would say, I saw such and such, and my mom would be like, what? And I'm left-handed. So I've known from a very early age that I'm not like other people. And I kind of hid it. But the weird thing is, now that I'm older and I see other people as, I see right through you. Never lie to me, never. I can read people like a book. I'm literally looking at a Dick and Jane. And what I've realized, the way I describe it is that I say that as a child, we're all born like a piece of jewelry, like Tiffany jewelry, right? With 6 prongs. And we have a jewel or a gem, whatever it is. Mine was being intuitive and reading people's energy. Whatever that gem is, on some weird plane, we also understand that we have to protect that or hide it. So the way I describe it is that I took it out of the setting and went and hid it under a mossy tree in the hinterland. And as I started comedy was my way to hide in plain sight. So as I became a better and stronger comic and other things happened in my life, in my early 40s, a transition was underway. And in my mid 40s, I remembered where I put the jewel. In my late 40s, I retrieved it. And it took me a while to put it back in the setting, but I'm completely restored as my 100% self. And I have zero fear of telling people exactly the truth. And if they're like, so you're saying you're psychic? I'm like, I never used the word psychic. I said I'm intuitive and I read energy and that I feel people. That's what I do. And everything else is just it's verbiage. It's semantics. I don't argue semantics with people. So that's story number 1.
Excellent. It's incredible.
Ready for story number 2?
I'm so ready.
Okay. Story number 2 is that I have a theory that every single human, and I'm your age. So you remember when we used to go to the zoo or the seaquarium or something? We had seaquarium in Miami. That you would pay X amount of dollars, and they had this, or maybe $1 when we were children, 4 quarters, and they had these wax mold things that would press like a thing for you, and then it would drop, and then you had to be careful with it, or your thumb would go through it. But they had these plastic injection molds, these wax plastic injection molds, and you were so excited to get your whatever you got, whether it was a dolphin or a camel or etc. You're a little young, so you might not remember these things, but they were a thing, like the pressed penny.
They were so cool.
And they were fun, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that that's how human beings are formed. I think every single person is under enormous pressure, in a good way, to be the answer to a million prayers. Your parents needed you, your grandparents needed you, your pastor, the person who sat next to you in 2nd grade. Every person you encountered in your life, you are an answer to a prayer they may not remember praying. And that once you realize that you are in perfect form and that you're exactly what you're supposed to be, and that you're actually an answer to a million prayers, whether you're a good or bad person, becomes irrelevant, because you have to be that thing in order for everyone to be what they're supposed to be. People aren't supposed to change. You're of a piece. You're supposed to be beautiful. You're supposed to be admired. You're supposed to be something that people wanted. But you are essentially of a piece when you're born. And everything else, again, is just garments. It's just, makeovers and garments. So I believe that because I'm a comedian, because my father was, back in the day, they called it manic depressive.
Yes.
My father was a bubble off of plum. My childhood had zero margin of error. He had shock treatment twice, to be discussed if you choose to. And, I've always wondered, like, where with people, and this is very crude, but it paints a picture. I always say where the crazy ends and the lazy begins. And when I say lazy, I mean not wanting to fight the good fight, that you do not have to be overtaken by a hitch in your giddy up. At some point, some people just say, well, that's just me, and it's sometimes an excuse for behaviors, whether it's my dad was, the Latino Don Draper, like I'm sure that being adulterous had a lot to do with his insecurities. I'm not saying they're not tied part and parcel, but there's things that you can fight the good fight. Everybody in my family's fat. As you can see, I'm not fat.
No.
Everyone's fat, but I'm not, because I didn't just say that's who I am. Everybody in my family's fat. It's genetic. It's cultural. I just made a decision, however not organic and challenging it's going to be, I'm not going to be unfit and fat and unhealthy as a result of that. So that's story number 2. Father was mentally ill, and I'm 100% sure that's why I'm a comic, and we'll discuss that.
Yes, absolutely.
Are you ready for story number 3?
I'm so ready.
And then
this
it's
is
all
incredible.
you. Then I'll just answer questions.
Oh, my goodness.
Story number 3. February of 1972 was an election year.
Yes. I remember it well.
Yeah.
Yes.
George McGovern was running for president. My father had just had his second huge nervous breakdown. And we moved from one neighborhood, which was an affluent, good neighborhood. My father was a successful architect in spite of the hitches in his giddy up. He's a brilliant man. I'm named after Dominique Fransone in the Fountainhead. And so my father...
wow, that's quite a reference, too.
Thank you. Was falling apart Christmas of 71. Wow. So my parents separated, and we were moved to my grandmother's neighborhood, which was a grittier Latino neighborhood, where we shared, my two brothers, my mother and myself shared one room in my grandmother's home. And I was moved to a completely different elementary school, different vibe, Latino kids, different. So February of 1972, I'd been in this school for 2 months, a little under 2 months. And my teacher, Audrey MacArthur, who I'm assuming is dead, rest in peace. She might be very old if she's not. She walked to the front of the class and she put a globe and a little flashlight. And, she's like, does anybody know why we have leap year? And she thought it was a rhetorical question. And my hand shot in the air. And I said, it's because we say it takes 24 hours for the earth to turn, when in fact it's 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.1 seconds, leaving us a quarter of a day at the end of the year, blah, blah, blah. Right? And in 1972, those were accurate. I'm sure it's much different now, the statistic. But, basically a day is not 24 hours long, is what I said. And she pinned a note to my chest, because that's how you still sent home notes to parents. And she pinned a note to my chest. I thought I was in trouble for usurping her. Oh. And as a child, because my life was crazy, to block out seeing the invisible and feeling things and empathizing with my father. And there's so many stories tied into his mental illness that I read constantly. So in the summer, I would read the World Book Encyclopedia for fun. I read the child craft that they'd send you every year. Like, I read constantly as a child. And that was the start of what they now call, the gifted programs or whatever. The note on my chest was that she was asking permission to test me. I was tested. Whatever the number was, they never told me that my IQ was enough to get into this special program. And I'm always the army of one. I was one of very few females. I didn't know that Jewish people were a minority until I grew up, because I was always surrounded by white Jewish boys. And I was always one of few females and only Latinos in most things in my life. I was always the one. So those are your 3 stories.
That's just incredible. And I think the fact that you're so incredibly well-read comes across in your references. I love the Fountainhead. It comes across in your stand-up. It comes across in everything I see when I listen to your podcast, everything. Which did actually lead to a question which I wasn't planning, which is essentially, what is because you talk about high school, but I didn't hear you talk about college. And
I never finished. I dropped out of junior college.
Wow. And yet you're more well-read than I was thinking today, more well-read than most college graduates that I know. And you seem to understand concepts better than a lot of maybe most college graduates that I know.
Thank you.
So I was very impressed.
There were a few reasons why I dropped out of college, but the main reason was what I really wanted to figure out was how to be myself. And I always promised myself that once I figured out how to be myself, I would go back to college. But that my real quest, my real quixotic quest, when people say, this has to happen, that has to happen, you have to get married or have children or graduate or get a master's, whatever people would say, this has to happen or that has to happen, on an intuitive level, I knew I have to happen. Whatever's inside of me has to find a proper way. And I struggled in my 20s. And the first time I open mic'd, I knew, like, the guy came up to me in the comedy club and he was like, how long have you been open micing? I've never heard of you. I said, this was my first night. He said, you're a natural. Come back next week.
Wow.
And it went that fast.
What? That's unusual.
Because I could hide. The comedy was the Trojan horse. I could hide my smarts, my quick-witted, like everything I was good at, I could put in the Trojan horse of comedy. My intuition, the speed that I could figure things out, all of it. It could all go in that.
And you were no longer a threat.
No, and it's like, oh, she's a comic. Of course she's weird.
Excellent. But tell me about the struggle, because that's so interesting. You had a big struggle.
Oh, my goodness. I jokingly say for years, my first battle was trying to get my weight below my IQ, and my IQ was very high. I was 25 to 30 pounds heavier than I am now till I was 43 and a half.
Wow.
And I mean, I hit it well because I figured if I can't be thin, I'm going to be fit. So I did 2-a-days. I was built like a brick, I worked out at 154 pounds. I had a 27-inch waist because I did 2-a-days. I was very, very fit. But that being said, I knew intuitively that, and this is what I tell young women, I say, it's not the pounds that make you feel bad, it's the weight. You have to take the weight. You have to take the invisible. Before the LBs will come off permanently, you've got to take the weight off or the pounds will just come back on. So I, again, like promising myself I'd go back to college, I told myself, I don't care if I'm ever thin or weigh whatever number I think is a good number. If I take the weight off, I've won. If I'm a chubby, happy person, I'm good. Happy is the goal, not thin.
Yes, that goes to so many things that you talk about in your act. But how did you do it?
Hypnotherapy.
No, really?
Hypnotherapy.
Wow.
I knew that nothing else would work. I knew dieting. I knew that it had nothing to do with eat 1,200 calories and work out and you'll be thin because I'm smart. Clearly, I could do that, you know?
Yeah.
This is what happened. You ready to know what happened?
Yeah, of course.
I'm crazy about you. You're going to have to promise me you'll have me back.
Oh, my goodness. I would be thrilled.
Done. So I got a radio job. My radio history is that my first job on radio was that they flipped an entire format for me.
What?
MS Communications in Indianapolis, the program director heard me promoting myself to be at Crackers Comedy Club in Indianapolis, and he invited me to Starbucks, and he said, surely my life would not be so easy that I could offer you a job in radio and you would take it. I said, don't call me Shirley, and how much are you going to pay me? And that was they flipped an entire format for me. Real 97.1, real talk, real music. Because they knew that radio was going in a different direction, and MS Communication was the same company that had Big Boy. Power. They knew about personality radio already. So they flipped me a whole format for me. And I moved to Indianapolis. And I didn't know how to do radio at all. I still kind of don't. I had a board op, and he would run the board. And he would literally point at me, which meant talk. Then he would give me symbols, which meant like wrap it up. And then he would be like, shut up, the song's starting. Like that's how I did radio for 2 years. And the show was very popular. Because I didn't know what I didn't know. I just did the show. So I was on the radio one morning thinking about the weight. The weight, just like the song, Take a Load Off Annie, The Weight. That song's actually called The Weight, That's the name of that song by the band. And yeah,
it is.
I'm full of facts. So,
but that's, I don't think I'd ever put those two things together.
So I was thinking about the weight, and I went on the radio and I flipped on the mic. My partner flipped on the mic, and I said, okay, people, I've been giving this a lot of thought. And, I'm at that time I was 42 and a half. And I said, I want to talk about the fact that when people say like these sweeping comments, like, you're an emotional eater, I'm like, well, duh, duh, Captain Obvious. But I wanted to understand the core. Like now, this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm 61 and a half. I'll be 62 in September. People talk about, this triggers me. Like nobody said trigger in 2004. Nobody, unless you were talking about Dale Evans. Like nobody said trigger.
No, you're right.
So, but I didn't use that word, but I said, I want to get to the core of the emotion, of the thing that sets me off, that sets the bell off in my head that says, ding, ding, a cookie will fix this. So I thought it through, and I had a fever dream, and it came to me, and I said, this is it. It's not success. Some people, when they're having a good time, they celebrate. They eat a lot when they're celebrating, or new love, or, I'm excited, I'm drinking champagne. No, my 100% trigger was instability because of my childhood.
Oh.
When I felt unstable or shaky, food was my leveler. It was my friend and leveler. I isolated the exact emotion because knowledge is power. And if you don't know exactly the instant that the bell goes off in your head, it says, ding, ding, a cookie will fix this, right?
And it does at the time.
Oh.
That's the thing. It has to work, and it worked. Yeah.
Like a charm. So I'm on the air and I say this. The phone line's lit up. My boss is screaming in the this is great radio. And I'm thinking, I don't care. That's not why I'm doing it. But everybody's like, what are you going to do about it? What's next? Like everybody's, what? People loved it, right? And I'm like, I don't know. It took me this long to figure this out. Like, give me a minute, So I went home and I had a fever dream, because when you noodle on something, I want to know, it'll come.
Yeah.
And so the next day I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start a 12-step group for people that only have time for 3 steps. And they said, what? I go, yeah. And at the time, since I was on radio, we called it Girls with Goals because they were angling towards women. My fan base was a lot of women. And so I said, they're like, what are the 3 steps? I said, number 1, take an unflinching moral inventory, but not in the negative, not like you do in AA or, where you're like beating yourself up for the things no. What do you have in the store of you? What lights you up? What excites you? What are you good at? What's your superpower? Like, take an inventory and be honest in the positive way. Take ownership of what's good about you. Then based on what's in the store of you to sell, name 1 goal. 1, not 5, not 3, not 2 that work together. 1. And then ask the group for help, even if it's just prayer. And if you don't believe in prayer, I have no problem with that. I get it. Then I say, SOAR, send out a request. So we started holding Girls with Goals meetings, and people in Indianapolis, restaurants were fighting. Restaurants and bars like, we want the next meeting, because they just kept growing and growing and growing. And I would like to bring it back, quite frankly.
That's an excellent idea. That's so funny because I think a goals meeting is so amazing and you can accomplish so much. I feel like I'm undercutting it because when you have multiple people together supporting a goal, even if it's just emotionally, even if it is just with prayer, it like energizes.
Life is a buddy system. Life is a team sport. It's a buddy system.
This goes to a Goethe quote that I think about. It's something like, if you have you have a goal, if you have a dream, believe it. I can't remember, but like, do it, like, begin it, like, just, and that's where the power will be. And here's the weird part. My goal, to give you an idea how powerful I knew it was, my goal wasn't to lose weight. My first goal with Girls with Goals was to finish writing a pilot about my father's mother that I had started and written in pieces and parts. And within 4 months of starting Girls with Goals, I had a development deal with Dick Wolf at NBC. Oh my God.
That's how powerful it is.
Big stuff, people.
That's how powerful it is.
Big as it gets. It's a Law and Order, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So ask away. I'm delighted. I'm having a ball.
Definitely start the group. I definitely.
Well, I you know what? I kind of wanted to redo it, and I want to call it Swag, Souls with a Goal.
Wow.
And I love the idea of swag and move through I think the timing for this, I think I was ahead of my time. I think that young people will respond to not like, hey, I don't care what, the first rule of Italian driving, according to the Gumball Rally, if you're very young. Raul Julia, rest in peace, gets in a Ferrari. It's based on a real New York to LA road race. He rips the rear view mirror out of a Ferrari, throws it up and says, the first rule of Italian driving, what is behind me is not important. And I live by that.
That is brilliant.
I live by that.
Yeah.
And that's what I would like people to do when they move forward. Who cares what you did to your ex or what drug you were on, or who cares? It's not important today.
That's going toward the forgiveness model, which I think you also, at the end of your shows, you say something that's so profound.
Thank you.
It's so pithy. Again, just very simple, but you said love hard, forgive harder.
Correct.
And be as happy as you can, as fast as you can.
Exactly.
Yes.
That came to me driving through an ice storm in Atlanta.
See? There you go. Ice storms are good for something besides a sex party.
Yeah, exactly. Was that Ang Lee that made that?
Yes, I do believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a movie.
Yeah, it's about a key party, which is now polyamorous. I do a whole bit about how nothing changes, just different verbiage. My nieces, they ask me questions, and I'm going, oh, you mean blah, blah, blah? And they're like, what? I'm like, this is not new.
Yeah.
It's not new. You say polyamorous. I said swinger. Abuelita says key party. Great grandma says, Liberace. Like nothing's new,
So I wanted to go into Monique because I think you are, in addition to being, which I also saw another thing saying a prettier Dr. Phil.
Ooh.
Which, that isn't a high bar, but
it isn't a high bar.
I would say a more profound and smart Dr. Phil, who's also pretty. But I was writing down your wisdom, and I was thinking, I'm just going to go to a show. So I went to Not Skinny, Not Blonde, and I wrote down what I thought. You said some really great things.
Yay!
If you don't mind that.
No.
So number one, which I thought was funny, but I think there's a reason. Don't trust skinny chicks. So that I like that because it's like, don't trust someone who's who restricts themselves.
Well,
who restricts.
Physical pleasures are physical pleasures. I say it in my act. And when I say skinny, I don't mean, I have a niece who's very slim, but you can tell looking at her, it's not contrived. She doesn't carry, back in the 90s, women carried their own salad dressing in their purse, They would carry low fat and sweet and low,
I knew them all.
Yeah.
If a couple's in marriage counseling, the man fucked up and the woman caught him.
That's my favorite. You got my favorite.
And I will have to say, ding, ding, ding. That's.
I go, men don't want to talk to you, let alone talk to a marriage counselor and pay money. I said, if they're willing to speak to a strange woman or man and pay for the privilege, they just want you to know how sorry they are.
I got, you can't marry someone for chemistry.
No.
Which I think is very deep because, it's...
Oh, no, I say Mother Nature is a pitiless bitch. Now that I know you can curse. Is it pitiless bitch?
Yes.
I say sometimes the smell of a man's neck will make you moist as a bundt cake. And that is not the man you should be with long term. In fact, I'll tell you an old bit real fast.
Yeah.
I used to say, I'm going to write a book called How to Take a Great One-Night Stand and Turn It into a Crappy 9-Year Marriage. I said I'm going to make it an ebook for $1 so I can help thousands of young women.
Oh my God, that goes to another one. I want to say, let me see. Oh, I'm just waiting. If you have to talk a man into you, you'll spend the rest of your life talking him into you.
That's right, like a car salesman.
I thought that was
They either
amazing.
want you or they don't want you of a piece. And John Gray, when I worked with John Gray, later told me that there's a such thing called a commitment shift. That's a very visceral thing, that when a man really loves a woman, that he makes a shift, like she's mine, she's in my cave, I want to protect her. And I go a step further and say, when men shift out of the commitment shift, because they can shift out of it after a while, you want to be gone fast, because that's like having an expensive car and the warranty ended. You do not want to be there when something goes wrong. It's going to cost you.
Very profound, actually. Men don't see us, women, the way we see us. They see you the way they found you. Don't talk them out of it.
I have a friend, comedian, who guys talk to me, and said, my wife doesn't wear the sexy lingerie. She won't do this. She won't do that. So I pull her aside. I go, hey, what's the problem? She's like, I've gained weight. That's where I got the term hail damage, because I told her, she's like, I have cellulite. I'm like, such an ugly word. Let's just say hail damage. She said, brilliant. I'm like this. I'm like that. I go, he doesn't see any of that.
No.
He just wants you naked, in a good mood, and willing to lick him. You know what I mean? Don't complicate it.
I think that's pretty right on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's 3:30.
Okay. So, do you mind?
No.
Okay.
So
we'll
Monique
have a show within a show.
She has a very special show within a show situation going on, that she, every day since COVID, she decided to do a 3:30 Facebook Live. Yep. And since we are actually taping at 3:00, she is going to start her Facebook Live, because she hasn't missed a day.
In 50, they'll do the count. A guy named Mundo. Hi, Mundo. So I'm going to show them where I am.
Is he from KFI too?
No. But he was a listener. Okay, so these are my guys.
Hi.
I'm on with Dr. Greg.
Nice.
And tell me your first and last name.
Brian Gomez.
Brian Gomez. It doesn't match, because I'm not going to lie to you. They know how I am about names. You do not look like a Brian.
No.
You look like a Gomez, but not a Brian. Brian's tend to be a little more high maintenance, and you look very easygoing and kind.
Thank you. That
yeah,
means
you
a
look
lot.
more like a Ben.
Oh, wow.
Bens are wonderful.
Ooh, Ben Gomez rolls.
Aren't
Wow.
Ben's great?
I might just change my name.
But I'm going to call you Nice Brian. And okay, so we're on day 1556. Thank you, Mundo. And this is Dr. Greg Kaysen.
Hi.
TheBomb.com. So I'll do a longer one later and catch up with you afterwards. I am having the best time on this show. This is Laura Ween. She was one of the most powerful women on like the second Girls with Goals meeting.
Oh, hey.
She wrecked me with her honesty, what her goal was. Do you mind, Laura, if even if you did, I'm going to do it. She said that by the end of the show, by the end of the presentation of Girls with Goals, that she wanted to be able to say, I love myself.
Wow.
And it was very hard for her. And it's one of the top moments in my life because she loved my radio show. She believed in me. She trusted me. And she said, I don't mind. Thank you, my love. And I stood in the middle of a room of people, of women, and I held her hand and I said, I'm not letting go of your hand till you say it. And she cried, she convulsed, she couldn't get it out, but I wasn't going to turn her loose. And I have like an iron grip. Like I've doled out a lot of hand jobs in high school. And oh my goodness, I never curse on the 330. Joke. But I wouldn't let go of her hand. And it was one of those pivotal moments that when she finally said it in tears, like the whole audience, all the other women, you could feel the energy shift in the room, and everybody was like, well, if she can do that, I can, it was amazing. So, hi, Harry. Hi, Susie. So, guys, I absolutely adore you, and I'll check in with you later, but I want to finish the podcast. So, until later on today, and I'll give you a catch-up how well it went, and yes, they are as handsome in person as they are. They're adorable.
Well, thank you.
So, until later on today, love hard, forgive harder, and get as happy as you can, as fast as you can. Bye, guys. So I do that every single day.
That was amazing.
From wherever I am.
What a connection.
I love them. And they know it. People know when you're faking something. I love them.
Oh, no, you're incredibly genuine. In fact, that's kind of interesting. I think before you were saying that your Facebook Live gets about 1,000 people.
Now it does, yeah.
And that's daily, so people are tuning in.
And all over the world. That's the part that excites me. I have a guy named Dave Jonas. It's 11:30 in England where he lives, and he's told me several times, like, you're the last thing I listen to before I go to sleep.
That's so beautiful.
I know. It makes me so happy.
And you also talked about a clip that has gone viral. Oh. And it's a comedy clip that went viral, and I think
it's still going.
Yeah, no. When I encountered it, I think it had it was a high readership. I can't remember the exact number, but now it's up to
20.5 million, and it's gaining 100,000 a night.
What I will do is on ours is put a link to that clip.
Thank you.
Because people will want to see what it's talking about, because they can go on YouTube and there's so much.
There's a lot of
Monique Marvez. Well, it's pretty good.
Thank you.
I would say it's pretty good.
Thank you.
But you also said something else about falling in love, and you talked about falling in love with yourself, and you said in your show, Not Skinny, Not Blonde, you said when you fall in love with another person, you fall in love with yourself. They bring out the best in you.
Yeah, that's what it. Look, like I say, I'm going to do things I've never done before.
Okay.
This I have said, but I don't think people took it seriously. So I'm saying it in a studio now and not on stage. I believe The Matrix was a documentary. And I believe that we do not take in the world like cameras. We project the world. We project the world. So you don't exist. I manifested you because I needed two brilliant, handsome men that I could have this conversation with.
Well, thank you. Then we manifested you back.
Yay.
Yay. And we're going to manifest you again.
Please. And I tell people, everybody in your life, as I told you, going all the way back to our injection mold.
Yeah.
Everybody in your life is a prayer answered. You just have to remember what you prayed. Whether it's an ex-husband, even the most challenging people are sometimes the ones that really set you on your path. So that being said, I've been blessed with real love in my life. I've been in love several times, and it was very real and powerful because I only have one speed. I think you guys have figured that out. But when I manifested these individuals, they made me braver, and they made me stronger, and they made me want to be better. They helped me level up. Because for some strange reason, it's very hard for people to level up for no reason. The biggest thing that I've ever done in my whole life. Want to hear a really great story?
Yes.
The best thing that ever happened to me was that I rescued a dog.
Oh, your dog. Yes.
Not even Nola, a dog named Bear that I rescued in the spring of 2003, and I was on the radio within 90 days. I had I went from almost homeless to a 6-figure job in less than 4 months because of the chapter in my book is called For the Love of Bear.
Wow.
His name was Bear. So you want to hear a quick story?
Yes.
Okay. So in 2001, right after 9/11, I'm in Canada. I'm working with a comedian named Andrew Gross, and he has a dog named Bear that he had rescued. Adorable dog. It was part Lhasa Apso, part Border Collie. So it looked like a shrunken chow. It was gorgeous, right? Mm-hmm. So this dog and he had a whole bit in his act about how his wife hates dogs. They had 3 cats. He wasn't getting laid because he'd rescued this dog, whole 9 yards, right? So I'm at his house. I see the dog, and I said, Andrew, if you don't want Bear, I'll take him. I'll take him right now. And so his kids they were little children. His kids were crying, don't take Bear, right? Then I get a gig for him to work with me in the States, and I go, Andrew, how's Bear? He goes, I gave him to a farmer. And I said, I told you I'd go get him. But he lives in Edmonton, Canada. And he said, well, Carol had it, and I gave him to a farmer. And I was like, wow. I go back to Canada a year later, 2003, April of 2003. I say, did you ever hear about Bear? Like, how's Bear? He goes, Monique, we got him back. The farmer gave him back. We gave him away twice and got him back. And he said, and forgive me for cursing, but I heard you.
Please.
He said, for fuck's sake, Monique, because he's Canadian. He goes, if I give you Bear and you take him, no matter what, you don't bring him back. Like, I don't care, So on a Saturday night, his wife got me the paperwork. Sunday, April the 13th, I had the paperwork to cross the border with Bear.
Wow.
Now, I'm going to cry. I'm telling you right now. Maybe. I'll try not to. So I was in a parking lot. I was broke. I lived in Koreatown. I had a used car. Like, my life was garbage. I had bald tires, bad credit. I was 39 years old. I had a stupid boyfriend. The whole reason my special is called Not Skinny, Not Blonde is because he said this was his offer to marry me. You want to hear it? You should just marry me because you're not what they're looking for. You're not skinny. You're not blonde. You haven't made it yet. Like, not I love you or I want to take care of you. It's like, give up.
Wow.
You might as well just come live with me.
Settle.
Yeah, come settle. Let me be number 3 because you're done, So when I rescued Bear, he gave me a ration. Like, I can't believe you're rescuing a dog. You can't even take care of yourself, blah, blah, blah. Whole 9 yards, right? So when I had luggage stacked in the back seat, and he put Bear's pillow on top of the luggage, and Bear could see me through the rear view, and I could see him. Like, he was looking into the rear view, eye to eye. And I remember I had a Scarlet O'Hara where I'm like, as God is my witness, I said, you will die in my arms. You will never belong to anyone else. I will never abandon you. Because at this point, he's a neurotic hot mess. Like, he bit me getting into the car. He drew blood. I didn't care. Right? So I get Bear home. I have him a couple days. I have a 3-day quit notice from my landlord saying you never were allowed to have a dog. And I have no money to get another apartment. My boyfriend's like, just get rid of the dog and come live with me. My whole family is like, how much can you love a dog? I'm like, I've been waiting 1.5 years for this dog. This dog is my destiny. Everybody's on my ass, right? So I decided I'm already depressed. I'm already miserable. I've got my arms around the dog. It's not about the dog. So I say, okay, what can I do now? Play Tom Waits. Because when you're really in the worst shape, you listen to Tom Waits, and then you can just hit the bottom of the pool and push your way up because it's just the most miserable music. Excellent. Sung by a man with a voice. It sounds like he gargled rocks. So so I'm listening to Tom Waits with my arms around the dog, crying my face off. I'm 39 years old. Everybody's telling me to give up. And I made a decision. And my mind is, do not mess with my mind when I decide. And I just told myself that my girlfriend and I have this talk where we say, where are you? And we talk about our you are here spot. So my girlfriend Deborah said, where are you right now? And I said, I'm on the corner of I'm something really brilliant, but I'm not an easy sale and nobody gets me. I said, wow, I can't stay on that intersection. For the sake of Bear, I have to move to everybody wants me and they're willing to pay dearly. So I'm moving. I said, and if I have to live in my car, I will not let go of this dog. And I was on a radio station. I went to Monument Circle in Indianapolis. I was offered a 6-figure job, and me and Bear moved to Indianapolis.
Wow. Incredible.
Every word true. But it's that the love of that dog just made I made the universe, I manifested. I made the universe shift for the love of that dog. I couldn't do it for myself.
I believe it because when we're living for somebody else, when we have a goal, to support another person. It gives us so much strength.
That's why we bring them in, because we need them.
Yeah.
So there you go.
That is incredible. Well, it seems so much less to go through some of these other wisdoms because everything pales. That's a very beautiful story.
He did die in my arms, by the way.
Oh.
It was time. I'd had him a minute, and I took him to a place in San Diego where you can like lay on a carpet and hold them, not even like on a table or anything. Like I found the best possible place, and that's how Bear left this earth.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
Yep. It's, anything you want to ask me, I'm happy to tell you because it's time. People need to hear real things.
I believe you're exactly right.
It's time.
On this podcast, we try to talk about research because I'm just so excited about all this new stuff that continually comes out and the public doesn't get to hear about it. It's like shared around in the science community. So this is my little cut of the earth that I like to do that. Like
have me back and ask me questions what I think about things that are being researched.
Oh, because I even did a little bit of that too, but it's your words that I'm actually more interested in today.
Thank you.
And we'll have you back to talk about the research studies because we have some fun ones. But I love this. Men are rebellious by nature. The more you nag at them, the less they want you to do.
Exactly.
This is simple learning theory. If people would just embody this one, it's a very simple thing.
It's so true. And because men have to have a certain amount of fight in them for the survival of the species. If they didn't have it, they wouldn't leave the cave. Imagine back in the day, you had to leave the cave and try to get dinner without becoming dinner. You know what I mean? Like, for women to try and soften men and make them different than their nature is not helpful. There's one thing between understanding or, whatever you want to call it, PC, whatever the verbiage is. Somebody, and I always say it doesn't matter gay or straight, in every relationship there's the good one and the other. You just have to know which one you are, and the other is the one with the fight, is the one that's going to keep the flame lit. And you have to have the light bearer. You have to have it, or you're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's quite profound. And you have that with your current relationship.
I have no relationship.
Oh.
I've been single for a long time. 100% single.
Right on.
Yeah. Like religiously celibate single.
Oh, right on.
Well, I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm just saying I'm leaning into it being something necessary and spiritual and good. I'm not seeing it as rejection or inability to connect, which is what my younger self might have.
Well, no, that is, in fact, you have another quote. It says, a man deep down in his heart does not want a promiscuous woman for long.
Exactly. And I believe that.
And you were talking about men being hunters, but you also talked to the women at that point. And I didn't write down that, but you were saying. I tell my nieces, men are territorial. All of this information that all these girls are posting on social media, like there's literally no such thing as TMI anymore. I know.
People tell each other the most profound, deep things on a first date. And here's what I tell my nieces. And again, you can't cancel me because what does that mean? More credit card debt for Monique. Like the man isn't paying my bill, so you can't chase the man off, right? So I speak truth. And I wouldn't be afraid anyway. But the upshot is I tell my nieces, I say, look, once you've said it, you can't unsay it. So wait for the moment. If you feel you want to share something, wait for the moment. But the reality is men are territorial, and they don't want to think a lot of people have walked on their lands. And because of the way their minds work, once you've told them, they can't get that out of their head. They're always going to picture you like banging Johnny down the street, like at inopportune times. You know what I mean? Like they're going to be out with friends, have a couple tequilas, and they're going to be like, yeah, she banged Johnny. You know what I mean? Like, I wish these were jokes, but I tell my nieces, I'm like, govern yourself. Men are hunters. I have a bit in my act. I go, if you want a man to love you forever and ever and ever, don't talk to him. Like I
Yes.
I didn't say don't talk with him. I said don't talk to him. Women have a tendency to talk at men. They don't engage. They don't wait for a back and forth. And I tell my nieces, a needs conversation is a fear conversation. I said the minute you feel the need to tell someone what you need, you've already lost. You're basically tell them the world has failed me. I'm pretty sure you're going to, but I'm going to give you instructions to help you not. As opposed to, I tell people, you know what? It's your job to be happy and to figure out what you really want and what you require. And then say, hey, I do this thing because I need to. Are you okay with this thing? I already eat healthy or do yoga or, go to meetings or whatever it is. You should already be doing it before you meet that person.
Mm-hmm. I 100% agree. And I actually love that advice because what was it else you said? Oh, and you also talked to men at that time, which I thought was really kind of interesting. And you said to the men a very sweet thing. This is talking about women. And you said, every girlfriend you dated before your wife is a skank.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's a whore and you regret it.
Yes. But perfect advice.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to feel not special. Everyone wants to feel special.
Amen. Everyone wants to think that love, is the great deodorant, cleaner, oxy, whatever you want to say. When you're in new love, clean slate, tabula rasa, you want it to be like a, new love car smell. You know what I mean? Like I have a girlfriend. I had a 3-hour conversation with a friend of mine who's in her 60s, and she met someone and she's excited, and she started talking about things. I go, stop. I said, right now you're in the lavender haze. This is the good part.
Yeah.
Don't be in such a hurry
to
get out of this part. Don't talk too much. Don't think too much. Don't share too much. Just be.
I 100% agree. I always believe that phase, which is officially called limerence, which is that bonding.
Is it called limerence?
It is.
Oh, I love that.
So it's close to lavender, but
yeah, lavender
it's a bonding time.
Oh, and it's beautiful.
Because much as when we're grieving, it's so painful.
I think Brian and I are having it now. I'm not 100% sure. It feels like we might be.
That might be.
Yeah.
That might be pretty cool. But it's that bonding time that you have together, that it's solidifying the relationship. It's bringing the two people together.
On a visceral level where details don't matter.
Where details do not matter. Because you could tell someone any detail. Oh, I just robbed a bank. Really? Oh, well, come
It needed robbing. There was too much money in that.
I'm glad you did it.
Yeah.
Something like that, yes. So, and then the work comes later, but during that time, I 100% agree, enjoy it.
And I think the longer you can make that go, the stronger the bond of everything after it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that is the chemistry a bit. But then you have to be the other part will come naturally.
Right.
The other part just comes.
I agree.
Then you just start to live it. And you also said something I thought that was profound, which is women can do anything, but they can't do everything.
Oh, I live by that. I used to just stack the deck against myself every day with a to-do. I call it the tyranny of the to-do. And I used to have a bit 20 years ago, which I no longer do because my brother's passed, so it's not funny anymore. But it was very funny, which is I'm convinced that my brother smoked a lot of pot, because my mom, for me, I had the baby book and the this and the that. And my brother's was just a bunch of odds and ends in a shoebox. And she would show it to me every few years ago. I really have to put your brother's baby book together. My brother died in his 50s. Guess what? Still in a shoebox. You know what I mean? It's a joke, but it's a little bit of, no, it doesn't matter that you never made his baby book. Why is that the hill? Why are you guilty about that? Women do more than men. Women create these arbitrary reasons to be upset with themselves that they didn't do something. And my mom was a great mother to my brother. She was way nicer to him than to me. I had a baby book, but everything else was,
down from there, and everything else was a shoebox.
Yeah.
Gosh, that brings us to, unfortunately, the end.
Okay.
I'm very sad. You actually said in your show, laughter is the salve that keeps us from scarring.
Yeah, that keeps reality from scarring.
Sorry, I misquoted it.
That's
It keeps reality from scarring. And another profound quote, because laughter is one of the most sophisticated defense mechanisms. It's something we all need. It's something I worship and crave. I absolutely, I can't tell you, I became a psychologist because of Bob Newhart. We can talk about that another time. time. But when I was
Emily, really,
when I was a little kid, I mean, like 6
best
years
show
old,
ever.
And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do that.
Mr. Carlin.
And everything. Carol.
Marsha Wallace.
She was amazing. Everything was great on that show. And my parents were like, he's an actor, honey. He's not a real psychologist.
The Thanksgiving episode.
I even wrote down psychologist. So it's like I knew very early.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to kind of come to that. And it was like, I do love to laugh. Like, I think laughter is healing, and it
short circuits the brain. You cannot have a negative thought while you're laughing. It's impossible.
Oh, I didn't know that, that's
We're all wizards, and going full circle.
Yes,
which is so good when someone plays along. I realized as a child that if I could make my father, I was so intuitive. I'm gonna leave you with one story. Ready?
Yeah.
I knew intuitively when my dad was slipping, when he was going into a depression. I could feel it as a very little girl.
Wow.
And as soon as I felt, I would say it's like a bracket broke and a shelf was like everything sliding off the shelf. I could feel it. I would start telling jokes into a salt shaker and doing little dance routines. Like I literally would put on shows for my dad when I felt him slipping. And when I first became a comic, people would, I was pretty good right from the start because I just basically lifted stuff out of my journals, and I'd been journaling since I was, a child. So I would take things and make them into jokes. I tell people I don't write jokes. I tell the truth and wrap it in bacon. So back to my father. When my father would come out to comedy clubs and people would walk up to him and say, Monique is brilliant. She's so funny. I love her. My dad would, without hesitation, he'd go, Monique was a fully formed demigod by the age of 7. That was his answer.
Wow.
And the thing is, he meant it. And people, we wouldn't go into it. They'd laugh, and walk away. But here's the story. When I was 7 years old, and I have a chapter in my book called The 7-Up Theory, which I say everything we do from the age of 7 and up is to heal or protect a wound we incurred from the age of 7 and down.
Yeah.
And I actually didn't know that there's psychological reasoning behind that. I just made it up because 7-Up sounds good. And 7-Up is when it happened to me. But the French call it the age of reason. When I was 7 years old, my father called me into the room. And by the way, I still have the chairs that he was seated in. They're mid-century, and I have them. My father called me into the room, and he said, I can picture it like it's like I'm sitting there. And he said, this has nothing to do with you. As soon as you say that to a kid, they're like, what did I do? He said, this has nothing to do with you. But I can't live here anymore. Your mother and I are separating, and I'll be leaving. I was 7. And my brain was like, oh, no, this is going to suck because you and I get on so well. She doesn't understand me. You're leaving me with, we get on fine now, me and my mother, but there was a time when we didn't. And it was like predate speech. But the upshot is that I remember him saying that. And at 7, I looked at him and I said, will you be happier if you don't live here? And he said, yes. I said, then I'll help you move.
Wow.
And he had an MG convertible.
Wow.
It was
one
in our
of the coolest
carport,
cars in the world.
Red MG. And I went into the closet and started gathering up his shoes and throwing them in the back of the open car. And he came out with a stack of suits. And when he saw how earnestly I was trying to get his things out of the house and into the car, he literally dropped his suits and sat in the grass sobbing like the lunatic he was. And I don't even remember stopping, putting stuff in the car. I don't remember what happened next. I don't remember anything. And I have a good memory. I just remember the sight of him in the grass, surrounded by his suit, sobbing. And evidently he remembered that as powerfully as I remembered it, because his answer when everybody would say, your daughter's terrific, or I really like your daughter. Monique was a fully formed demigod by the age of 7. And that's what comedy is. Comedy is tragedy plus time. That's a funny answer. And we had my father and I had so many laughs over his insanity, later in my life. We had so much fun later in my life, understanding it could not have gone down any other way.
Wow.
It couldn't, or I wouldn't be me, and I like me, and I'm a happy person.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
Monique Marvez, thank you so much. I mean, this was absolutely incredible. Just to kind of say to, the normal stuff, like, subscribe, Give us stars. YouTube.com/Dr. Greg for videos and whatnot. If you have questions on topics, hit us up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, bidding you farewell, and Monique Marvez. Let's do your outro, Monique.
Okay. Love hard.
Forgive harder.
And get as happy as you can,
as fast as you can. Thank you so much.
Bravo. Never said those things, not even on KFI ever.